Good morning, colleagues. Firstly, let me tender an apology by our CE, Joey Mulauti. I wasn't scheduled to speak, so I'm speaking on her behalf. She's not able to join us this morning. So, and thanks to SAMSA for inviting us to come and talk about the tariff-related issues or economic regulation issues on the topic of bunkering. So, I have an overview, but maybe let me not waste time on it because the slides are few, so it's not a lot of things. Just to start with the role of the ports regulator and the functions of the regulator. I'm going to be brief on this slide. The regulator is an entity that exercises economic regulation in the port system, and it deals with the matters of pricing, it deals with the matters of ensuring that the port system makes investments that are required, it creates the capacities that are required, and it also deals with matters of monitoring the activities of the authority. It deals with matters of equity of access for those emerging entities that want to participate in the space, but also for those entities that are already in the space but they want to expand. It also adjudicate complaints and appeals against the authority in instances where the participants in the space feel like they are not given enough space for them to grow. Just to look at the universe and where the port regulator is, there is the picture, as you can see, the Department of Transport, you can see the DPE, you can see where the Transnet fits in and where the NPA fits in, and the PCCs. Let me not waste time on the slide as well. So other than the matters of economic regulation, obviously the regulator then supports some of the objectives of the national program, and I've listed a few, and some of them we take them out of the NDP, and they talk to matters of reducing the cost of doing business in the country, the matters of facilitating trade in the country. There are those that are also talking to investments in the infrastructure space, in the transport sector, in the maritime. There are those that are talking to the efficiency, ensuring that there's fluidity of economic activity in the country. And there are those that deal with matters of access as well. So the regulator in its programs, develops instruments of regulation. And those instruments are flexible enough to accommodate the national program on some of the objectives. But obviously, there are limitations. It can expand, but there are constraints and there are limitations insofar as these instruments apply. So just to mention a few, the regulator, these instruments talk to the tariff methodology, it talks to the studies on port performance, benchmarking of port performance, and the response afterwards in order to incentivize performance in the port. And it talks to comparison with other countries insofar as pricing of infrastructure and services in the port space is concerned. And the other thing is in that objective where the MTSF was going to deal with matters of a reliable transport system, the economic regulation spectrum, the consolidation of the economic regulatory spectrum. The PRSA in that instance is earmarked as a nucleus of establishment of the economic regulator, the transport economic regulator. And indeed, we're participating in some of those programs in preparation towards the final phase. The other matter of importance is that one of dealing with corporatization of the NPA to open up the space, legalize the field, and that's where the regulator is supporting the department in terms of guiding the department and the DPE on aspects of and implications and the impacts on corporatized entity, the funding involved, the gaps that arise when we embark on such a big program, and some of the mitigations as to what is the best way of going about it. And many other studies that we do, or many other incentives, other interventions that are undertaken by the regulator to support the space. Those include research generally in the transport sector and the services, and the best way of crafting the tariffs that respond to the space. Just an extension of some of the objectives, particularly those driven by ministerial priorities, the coastal shipping, the endeavor to have SA-flagged vessels increasing. And the regulator has come up with some ways to support that initiative, including tariff discounts, including research that is aimed to support and make sure that those objectives are realized. And many other interventions such as trainings, internships, and liaising with the researchers in the space. So, as you know, economic regulation is quite a rigid space. It is not always, whilst it is flexible, it is rule-based, so we stick to the rules, and in determining some of, or in guiding the regulator to make some determinations, we are guided by the directives, and those directives guide insofar as the affordability of the port services will be concerned for the port users. But also they need to make sure that the NPA is an entity that is sustainable, it is able to make investments, it is able to create capacity, and the predictability of the long-term sustainability and predictability of the pricing, which should be in the public interest. And dealing with matters of cross-subsidization where you should, as well as deciding where you should provide discounts, where you should and encourage some level of subsidization which is in the public interest, and deal with matters of redress as well. There is the methodology. I don't want to go into it. It looks intimidating, that formula, but it is a very simple formula. It deals, or the ultimate product of that formula is the revenue, the size of the revenue. So without wasting much time into it, let me also now move closer to the space of bunkering, where we part of that tariff methodology, we are dealing with pricing of marine services. And those are the services that are offered, and mostly they apply on onshore and not so much on offshore bunkering services, but on onshore, and those are the services that the vessels will be familiar with. As the vessels come into the ports, they receive services from tax, pilotage, and so forth and so forth. I've given the tariff structure as well, because I have said that in economic regulation we stick to the rules. So even though there's a possibility of expansion, it's very limited, it's constrained, and we are rule-based. And we're talking about this topic at the time when there's a huge tariff reform in the space, and we are doing a study that ensures, or we are implementing a program that ensures that there's going to be equity of access. And unfortunately, or if you look at it in some way, it looks like ships, costs to services that are being given to ships will be increasing over time, but that's a 10-year trajectory. So whilst the percentages look scary, that movement would have happened over time. It's a long term of over 10 years or 10 years and above. So the full picture is that whilst the marine is carrying the cost, the reality is that the ultimate cargo owner is actually the one who pays the cost. So whilst the portion that goes to marine increases, the portion that goes to cargo juice reduces. So whilst there's movements in all pie charts and so forth, the ultimate port user might not necessarily see any of this thing. The cost that they pay is either increasing by the average tariff increase that may be related to inflation, or that they may be below inflation, or just around inflation. Closer to the topic, bunkering incentive, and why would the regulator be considering this? And in fact, we have undertaken a study in the ports regulator in terms of trying to understand the space and try to see how can we support some of the initiatives that are needed here. And we were driven by those factors that are listed there. The CMTP endeavor to develop an IMC in Africa. The other thing is that the sectors are important for economic growth. The sectors create employment. The sectors go beyond the port, and therefore there was a need to then see if there could be some move from the pricing side to try to support the sector. And I think lastly or ultimately, that is the space where the regulator has then come up with some discounts. In as much as the space is rigid, the regulator has considered or is always flexible to some extent, and those are the kind of discounts that are applicable. SA flag vessels receive 30% discounts. That is currently in the decision of the regulator that can be reviewed or may be reviewed depending on the conversations that are pursued in the industry. If there are motivations to hold on to the discount, those conversations are welcome. The license fees for port activities stand to receive 30% of the discount, and there is an arrangement there as to how can you then lessen or how can you enjoy the discount. Furthermore, 35% in port dues and the ultimate one, 60% on vessel calling for the sole of taking on bunkers. And like I said, a lot of these things are applicable more on the onshoring and not so much on the offshoring. And that was my last slide. Thanks.